All right, this video is for those of you that are dealing with the graph and Andrew Jackson. The key historical question is Andrew Jackson a sinner or a saint? And was Jackson's presidency appropriate for the nickname Hero of the Common Man, or were the events that took place during his presidency would it be more appropriate to label him a king or give him the nickname King Andrew the First? The final product that we are going to create at the end of all this will be a 5-paragraph essay in which you will establish a thesis statement or a position on this question, and you will back it up in 3 body paragraphs with historical evidence and analytical statements. Anytime that you're trying to produce an essay outline, when you're trying to create an argument in history, the very first thing you have to do is come up with historical evidence. What are the facts? What are the pieces of evidence that you want to consider when answering this question or taking a position on this question? You have a couple sources here that you can choose from. You have your textbook scavenger hunt. Those have roughly 15 questions dealing with Andrew Jackson's presidency. You have the primary sources that you guys have done. Those deal with Andrew Jackson's presidency. And then you have this final packet that I gave you today. Now, I do like this, and I think that you should spend some time with it. It does give you a little information about some topics or some areas that the book or the sources don't spend a lot of time on. His background, his personality, and some of the other events like the Maysville Road veto, the kitchen cabinet. Those are some things that you might want to take into consideration when answering this question. These are things that you have to take into consideration when answering these questions. So I would spend some time looking through that and highlighting the necessary information that you want to pull from. So the first step, I would have a sheet of paper out. I would write down the key historical question, and I would label this historical evidence. I would number it 1 through 30. You need at least 20 to 30 pieces of evidence for this essay, at least items to consider. And then I would start going through your sources. What has your research shown? What did you highlight in this packet? What necessary information can you pull from these sources? And start jotting them down. You don't have to explain why. You don't have to explain how. You're just saying, I think that, the 1828 election, that's, pertinent information, so I'm going to put it down. And just 1 through 30, that's what you need to have down. But then we want to start to explain, all right, so how does this evidence that we're using, how does this fit into my argument? How is this going to help me brainstorm and outline my position on this key historical question? So your job is to present your argument visually. You're going to set the terms by which you measure Andrew Jackson, and in just a moment I'm going to show you this graph back here and we can walk through it. Alright, so your final product will look something similar to this. You're going to take a piece of poster board that I will give you, and you're going to have a graph with an x-axis and a y-axis. Alright, and so on either side of both axi, you're going to place the terms of your historical questions. So at the top, I'll put saint. The bottom, I'll put sinner. I'll put common man. Over here, put hero. And I'll put king over there. All right. And you're looking at your evidence, and for each piece of evidence, you want to determine where it fits on this graph. Is this more? Does this, I guess you could say the use of his veto power. Is this Andrew Jackson, acting more like a king? Then it would be placed over on this side of the graph. And is this, example of him being ineffective or a bad president? Or then it would be down here. All right. Well, if you thought differently, right? No, the things that Andrew Jackson does veto makes him a hero of the common man. So it's going to be over on this side, right? And this is a hallmark of a great president. So it'd be up here. As you're placing these on your graph, I think a way to make it a little bit easier is to divide the graph up again. So what I would draw maybe like a dotted line there, and then make some more quadrants. All right, and you do the same thing down here. And that way you've kind of divided this up again, and all right, so here, for instance, this first quadrant, it's like, all right, so Andrew Jackson, to a small extent, maybe not that significant, is acting more like a king with this piece of evidence. And once again, he's being effective when he's doing this, even though he's acting like a king. He's being kind of effective. So he would go in here, right? And so you would just put a piece of evidence down there. I would use the index cards. I would use maybe some sticky notes, right? And I would put the piece of evidence. So I don't know, bank veto, all right? And then you just go ahead and you start plotting more points on your graph. I like those little dotted lines there because it just organizes it a little bit more. So not everything's like, all over the place. It's all right. So in this quadrant here, I've divided up into 4 smaller quadrants. And so now I can kind of evaluate within that one quadrant. You're not done. When you're plotting these points here, we eventually want to use these to create an outline. And outlines have not only the historical evidence, but they also have analysis as well. Analysis and analytical statements are statements that elaborate on the information that you've provided. Analytical statements help develop your thesis. And some things that you can do so that that you're including analytical statements, some sentence starters. A consequence of this was, this is significant because this shows, this changed because, what else? You can say Jackson's veto resulted in, and then as you're finishing out those sentences, right, you're using those analytical statements. This resulted in blah, 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 blah. All right. This shows Andrew Jackson being an effective president because, and now all of a sudden, you've started to develop your argument. You're not just saying, here's everything I know, but here's what I know about Jackson. Here's a specific example. And this is how and why that example, backs up my claim that Jackson was a president that was a champion of the people. Or this backs up my claim that Jackson was more of a sinner or an ineffective president because. I think that this analytical part or the analysis, and even plotted things on the graph, right? It's going to take some time looking at the evidence. It's going to spend some. You're going to have to spend some time really examining, what this evidence shows you. About Andrew Jackson and about how he went about his presidency. I don't think that this will be an activity that can be done quickly, not if you want to do it right. So doing this, plotting your points on the graph appropriately with thought, being intentional where you're plotting these points, and really spending some time thinking about the analysis, thinking about, what was the consequence of this, what changed because of this, what did this result in? Why is this significant? I think, and asking yourself those questions, you're really gonna find yourself having your argument presented to you, and even better, it's gonna be presented to me, which will help out your grade. If you have any questions, please ask me, and I look forward to seeing your graphs.